It's been said that there aren't any real men out in the wasteland anymore. You see people carrying around those Gatling plasmas and auto axes, and you think to yourself, what I need is a real weapon. I want a weapon that brings back memories of the Old West. It might not shoot the fastest, it might not do the most damage, but by God, I want something that's fun to shoot. And thanks to the collaboration with Nuka-Cola, we've got just the weapon for you. The Western Spirit. Alright, I'm not going to be able to keep that accent up for the entire video, but hello everybody, Commander Mitchcraft here. Hope everybody's having a good time in the Wasteland. With all of the meta changes that have dropped with the new update, the Glow of the Ghoul, I've always thought it would be really cool to go back and find some weapons that maybe are slept on and that people don't tend to think about when they want to find a new weapon to build around. We've talked a lot about the Furious and Onslaught changes that dropped with the new update. We did an entire video about it explaining all of those changes and what they mean. And one of the first things that came to mind were some of these old weapons that were around from previous expansions. Immediately, my mind went to the Western Spirit. Now, if you're not familiar with the Western Spirit, it's really easy to get a hold of. All you have to do is complete the Most Wanted event over at Nuka-World on tour, and it's a guaranteed chance to drop with every time that you complete it. The weapon itself has some pretty good legendary effects on it as well. The one that we're going to be most interested in is the 1-star, Furious. It's an extra 5% damage per Onslaught stack, and it gives you 9 additional maximum stacks to your Onslaught. We'll talk about this more in a second. The second legendary effect is Hitman, which gives you an extra 25% damage while aiming down the scope. And finally, Swift, which gives you extra reload speed. And that's important for this gun because you reload every bullet individually. Those legendaries themselves might not be exciting, but it's worth noting that there are some inherent abilities that aren't tracked anywhere. For starters, there's an extra 2 ammo capacity, so instead of a normal 5-shot lever action rifle, this is a 7-shot lever action rifle. There's also a 25% damage buff straight off the top, so no matter what stars that you would have on it, it actually does a higher damage than the regular lever action with the same legendary perks. All of that said, the goal with this build is very simple. We want to prioritize onslaught damage by using Gunslinger Master. We want to prioritize sneak attack damage because every bit of damage that we can bleed out of this is going to be super important. And we want to prioritize reload speed so that we can get back to shooting faster. It's worth noting that this is not a VATS build. This is something you will have to use scoped shooting for, and your damage will go down if you use VATS or hip fire without looking down the scope. For your legendary perks, we want extra special points. So we want to make sure that at least 3 of our legendary specials are at 5 stars. We're also going to be taking Sizzling Style and Funky Duds for extra damage resistance, as well as follow through. At level 4, this means that our sneak attack damage is increasing the damage done to the target by 40% for 10 seconds, and you're shooting frequently enough that this will always continue to trigger and you won't have any downtime on it. With all of the legendary perks, this gets our special up to 6 strength, 15 perception, 12 endurance, 6 charisma, 8 intelligence, 15 agility, and 9 luck. One other thing to mention is that this is assuming that you are a ghoul. Now, I know a lot of people haven't made the switch over to ghoul yet. I personally would argue that switching to a ghoul is the best thing that you can do if you really want to squeeze the most damage out. Whether you're a ranged attacker or a melee attacker, it just makes sense, and there are plenty of perks that support no matter what your playstyle is. Digging in on the perks themselves, in the strength category, we have Arms Keeper and Bandolier to help manage our weapon weights and ammo weights. We also have Arms of Steel to ensure that as we are shooting, our accuracy remains high as it gives us an extra 30% accuracy. Our perception perks are where the meat and bones of the build come from. We're equipping all 9 ranks of Rifleman, Expert Rifleman, and Master Rifleman, which gives us a flat 20% boost per card for all of our non-automatic rifle damage. The new updates to the Tank Killer perk means that instead of only working with rifles, pistols, or shotguns, they work with all small gun builds. A small gun is anything that's not a heavy gun or a melee weapon, so it makes sense to be able to take Tank Killer for the extra armor piercing and Ground Pounder, which will give us a higher reload speed. All of our endurance perks are utility except for radiation power, which allows you to expend glow to do more damage, something that you'll see us taking quite a bit on most of the builds that we do. Otherwise, we're taking fireproof for extra fire resistance, the combo of glowing gut and through hiker to ensure that we're gaining glow back quickly with toxic goo, and of course starch genes to make sure that we're not mutating away from the mutations that we have. In the charisma category, we're taking tenderizer, which allows us to do more damage to our enemies. We're also taking utility perks moral support and united ordeal to make sure that our feral meter stays high and that we get more special points as long as we're grouped up with other ghouls. The agility tree is where things get interesting. We're taking both ranks of both guerrilla and gunslinger expert and master, and this is going to allow us to get the most onslaught stacks that we can, which work in synergy with the weapon's natural onslaught mechanic. This gives us a combined total of 30 stacks and several stat boosts that go along with it, and it also allows our stacks to start at maximum level and work down as we continue to shoot enemies. Since the regaining of onslaught stacks outpaces our shooting and reloading, this allows our damage to be as maximized as it possibly can. We're also going to be putting full ranks in covert operative, which gives us extra sneak attack damage, as well as Mr. Sandman, which allows our silenced weapons to do an additional extra sneak attack damage. Finally, in the luck category, we have Wild West Hands, which will allow our weapon to randomly reload itself entirely. We're taking Bloodied Mess, which is an essential damage increasing perk for any build. We're taking Faulty Spots to enhance our weak point damage, which is good because we will be aiming at limbs, heads, and other critical spots, and Junk Shield to have that little bit of extra damage resistance in order to get our survivability up. When it comes to the Western Spirit itself, there are a few weapon mods that we want to make sure we have in place. The Fierce Receiver increases our critical damage and also makes our reload speed even faster. For the barrel and stock, I like the True Prefix because it gives us extra accuracy and it also allows us to reload our gun faster. It doesn't matter what distance you put on, whether it's long, medium, or short, but make sure that one of the mods that you equip on this weapon is a scope. The distance is more a personal preference, but the more comfortable you feel being up close, the shorter the scope that you need to have. Finally, the most important weapon mod is the Suppressor. The Suppressor is what procs our Covert Operative and Mr. Sandman perks, and it allows us to be able to, outside of battle, get extra sneak damage to the point where sometimes you only have to fire once. For mutations, I recommend Eagle Eyes for higher critical damage and perception gains, Marsupial to increase your carry weight, Herbivore because most of the food buffs that you're going to want are in the plant and plant-based meals category, Speed Demon for faster reload and faster movement speed, Healing Factor to give you some healing outside of battle, Bird Bones, which gives you higher agility and feather falling, and Herd Mentality. By the way, with Herd Mentality, as long as you're in a group, even if it's a solo group with just yourself, you will get the benefit from it, so it's always worth taking. For armor, one of the most overlooked things that you can do is making sure that your under armor is properly suited for the job that you want to play. In this case, any of the leathers will work perfectly because it gives you extra perception, extra agility, and a minor extra luck. Make sure you take the shielded variety in order to really get the most out of the extra special points. As far as the armor itself, I really like the Brotherhood Recon set because it is the highest damage resistance that you can pick up. If you don't have access to the Brotherhood Recon set, that's fine. Any armor that you have will work as long as it provides a lot of damage resistance. For the legendary mods, I would recommend Vanguards since Overeaters is off the table because you're a ghoul. For the second star, I would recommend Perception +2 on all sets in order to be able to get even more damage out of your armor. I also typically run Armskeeper in the third set because as we continue to do events and loot enemies, having those guns weigh us down is just a real drag, and the more that we can keep out in the action without having to retreat back to a tent or our camp to recycle and restock everything, the better. If you're lucky enough to have options for 4 stars, Rangers is the definitive go here because you can get extra range damage just by slotting the mod in. So how do we play this character? Easy. We're a cowboy sniper. That's what we do. Stay in the shadows, use sneak attacks as much as possible. In group events, you probably are going to lose a little bit of damage due to the chaos and enemies going all this way and that. Keep firing. VATS is always an option in a pinch, but just remember, since we're not spec'd out for a VATS build, your damage will decrease. And finally, if you want to get into the true spirit of the Wild West, there's some great choices to be able to wear on top of your armor. There's several cowboy hats, deputy hats, sheriff's hats, and the Nuka-World duster or Western duster make a great statement when it comes to firing your weapon and really embodying the part of Wild West. Overall, I would rank this a solid B+. If we can take an S rank build into literally any content without trouble, and an A rank build into most any content except for the raids and the Gleaming Depths, this build is viable for any of the world events and typical things that happen in the Wasteland. You might struggle a little bit if you take this into the expeditions or the daily ops, but if you have a really strong team to help you, you won't really notice it. It's only if you try to do those things solo where you're going to see that your low fire rate might give you problems. Well, partners, it's time to ride off into the sunset. I hope this gives us an opportunity to really appreciate the Western spirit for the gun that it is. A really solid 3-star weapon with inherent damage bonuses that lets us go out there and play Cowboy to the best of our ability. If you like this build, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're continuing to do weapon builds just like this as we explore these rarely used or kind of hidden in the background weapons to try and build something out that is not necessarily meta, but just overall fun to do. We stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday on Twitch, so if you want to catch these builds in playtest action, definitely check out the channel there. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Otherwise, I hope you have as much fun with this build as I have, and I will see you out in the Wasteland.